Ferrari on the pole. Ferrari 1-2, front row of the grid for the inaugural Miami Grand Prix. Lots of Ferrari fans in the United States, particularly in Florida. So what an afternoon it was. Brilliant lap by Charles Leclerc. It was interesting on both his laps in Q3. He was slower than Carlos Sainz, his teammate, in Sector 1, but quicker in Sectors 2 and 3. I guess that in some ways sums up the character of the two drivers. There's Carlos, who's a little bit more adrenaline driven. Get into the lap, tyres starting to go off towards the end of the lap, and Charles a little bit more calculating, but beautiful to watch as well. Interesting also to see that Charles did the entire day, FP3 earlier this afternoon in Miami, and then qualifying entirely on the soft Pirelli tyres. Never went near the medium or the hard tyre. So there was no doubt in his mind about the object to be achieved today in qualifying, and that was to get the pole. And if you're on the pole in a Ferrari, which isn't brilliantly quick in a straight line, compared of course with the Red Bull Honda, but is very, very good in all other departments: braking, turn-in, grip level, traction, drivability, adjustability to the variables. If you've got all those things, you might as well be on the pole and see what you can do from there. Charles Leclerc on the pole. Very, very nice lap. Very nicely judged qualifying as well. A few slight errors, if you might call it that. Massive little bits of oversteer, little bits of turning in, perhaps a little bit too late in a couple of places, but nothing to be worried about at all. Looking really good. And interesting to see him before qualifying on the just outside the back of the garage, studying an exercise book. I'm going to have to ask him what that was all about. I will come back to you on that one. But I suspect they were notes from previous day, thinking about the corners, thinking about the lap. Not the sort of Mika Hakkinen going into the zone thing, but another way of doing it. Very impressive to see that. And a few words too about Carlos Sainz, because he had that shunt yesterday. And it was quite a big shunt. He had to recover from that, obviously, and a pretty tentative FP3 earlier this afternoon. But in qualifying, did a really good job as well. His two laps basically replicated one another. So you've got to say that was about the limit of where he was going to be in that car, given that he couldn't afford to make any more errors at all. And a really good result in the end. P2, all red front row for Miami. So, having said that, where was Max Verstappen? Well, Max Verstappen, of course, didn't do many laps yesterday, particularly in FP2, had that drama with the steering and the smoke out the back of the car. Anyway, Red Bull got it all sorted, and he had a very, very good FP3. Interesting to see, I keep wording that interesting, but it was fascinating to see how Red Bull approached FP3, and that was to get as much information as possible. So Max did a lot of laps in FP3. He did a lot of laps on the medium tyre, getting a lot of good information in various fuel loads, probably at least 2 different fuel loads, and then went out on the soft right at the end and had a bit of a weird, he didn't actually have a spin. He got into the middle of the chicane, the back end came out, and then he sort of just hit the brakes and stopped in the middle of the corner before he hit anything. Probably a wise decision. It's not the first time we see Max have one of these sort of inelegant spins where he sort of stops in the middle of the corner and then carries on. I suppose that's a modern Grand Prix car for you. That's, once you get it to go like that, it's probably more difficult to do anything about it if you've got the talent of Max Verstappen. Anyway, that kind of put an end to his running in FP3. But meanwhile, Sergio Perez, his teammate, doing a brilliant job out on the hard tyre, putting in a lot of laps on the hard tyre. So at the end of FP3, they're a Red Bull and they got good information on the medium in various fuel loads. They've got good information on the hard tyre. They've got really good information from Sergio on the soft tyre, because he was very quick at the end on the soft tyre, even if Max didn't get a lap in there too. So Red Bull, I'm not saying they were thinking, well, we won't go for the pole here. Of course they're going for the pole. But they were thinking, we need to get a lot of information here to see what's going to happen. It's a new circuit. We don't know how the track's going to evolve. We don't know how the tyres are going to go tomorrow. It could even be hotter. It was really hot, 50 degrees centigrade track temperature. So yeah, a fascinating approach by Red Bull, Adrian Newey, to how they handled a slightly disappointing Friday for them. And yeah, they didn't get the pole. Why didn't they get the pole today? Well, Max was looking for the pole. I think he might have got it actually. He was right there with Charles, a little bit quicker here, a little bit slower there. But on his last very quick lap, he, coming out about turn 3 or 4, it's a very, very quick approach to an S-bend. It's where George Russell kind of suddenly lost his confidence that had built up massively yesterday, where the Merc started to bounce and he lost his very quick lap in Q2. And that's where incredibly, Max had a moment. He just ran wide, very high speed, got slightly offline, ran onto the runoff area, and that was it. That was the lap gone. I think that was a function of not doing many laps on the soft tyre, actually. I mean, if anybody knows the soft tyre around Miami now, it's going to be Charles Leclerc. And if anybody who doesn't know the soft tyre, it's going to be Max Verstappen, because he didn't run it really this morning. And yesterday was a bit of a write-off. And he did all his homework on the race tyre. So, yeah, he was out on the soft tyre, obviously all 3 sessions in qualifying, Qs 1, 2 and 3. But it's a new circuit as well. It didn't do many laps. I mean, by the end of Q2, I made a note of it actually, even in qualifying, at the end of Q2, middle phase of Q2, Max had only done 11 laps in Q1 and Q2, whereas Charles at that point had done 18 laps. Lando Norris, 16 laps. Lando Norris, I mentioned Lando Norris. And there's some incredibly good performances, I thought, in qualifying today. And I suppose we should talk about them in the order in which they will be starting tomorrow. Sergio Perez is in there too. He did a very good job. He's starting P4 in the other Red Bull. But Valtteri Bottas, having hit the wall yesterday, I did say yesterday, I'm sure that'll be the last time he makes a mistake like that. And what a recovery. He didn't do much in FP3 today, but just brilliant. 29.4 in that Alfa around Miami. I thought that was an outstanding lap. Probably the lap of the day. Well, I don't think you can say that, of course, but really, really good lap from Valtteri. And a massive battle, if you like, with his former teammate, Lewis Hamilton, in the factory Mercedes. I mean, we've had this all year. I've been talking about, wonder what Toto thinks when he sees Valtteri walking towards him in the pit lane these days. And that's Valtteri again showing how good the Alfa is and how well that team has gelled since he got there. So Valtteri 29.4, Lewis 29.6. On a day when George is saying, I don't have any confidence in this car, terrible bouncing on his Mercedes. You could see it too on Lewis's car, perhaps not to the same extent, maybe different setups. Maybe we're getting into the world now where they just don't know what causes the oscillation to be bigger on one car compared with another. Maybe it's slightly different aero setup, maybe it's slightly different fuel load, maybe it's anything. They obviously don't know either, because there's Lewis today, 29.6, and George didn't even get out of Q2, didn't get under 30 today. So a very different car for George Russell today to the one he had yesterday in terms of his confidence and his ability to go out and get a lap time. Maybe it's all to do with the way the tyres are coming up to temperature as well, or not. And if you have a very bad out lap, or you make a mistake on your first lap and you've got to do a second lap, maybe that affects a Mercedes more than it does, I don't know, a Ferrari. All in the world of porpoising, this massively intriguing, difficult to understand world. So yeah, Lewis 29.6, I thought that was an outstanding lap as well. And that lap, I mean, he will talk about it. He'll probably say, car isn't that good, and everybody's excited, still way off the pace. I can see him saying all that. But I can, deep down inside, that lap would have given him a lot of confidence, partly because of where George was, and partly because it was a really good lap. 29.6 in a Merc around Miami. I think he would know deep down inside that, as he once said about, it was a decade ago now probably, I asked him once at a test, it was the first time he'd driven the car for about 4 months, I think. It was a Barcelona test. And I said, how's it feel, Lewis? And he said, I can still do it. I thought that was great. And I think that was, that feeling he probably got today, I can still do this. So good for him. Pierre Gasly was slower than Yuki, and both AlphaTauris, really good job as well. They'd come from, a very difficult weekend in Imola to come back and both get into Q3. And Pierre was a little bit behind Yuki, but got him in Q3. Very good lap. And got to say, both AlphaTauris also did the homework, both of them on the hard tyre in FP3 earlier today. And that was very impressive. That's a classic Franz Tost thing. I don't care, we've got to do our homework. Sort of Frank Williams, then Franz Tost. Really good. And I thought Lando Norris too. I mean, Lando was, as I said yesterday, very quiet, classic Lando sort of build-up. But then Q2, bang, 29.6 in a McLaren that hasn't looked like getting under 30 all weekend. And that lap, that's a Lando lap, isn't it? Because where's Daniel Ricciardo? He's in 30.3, good lap, Daniel. And then 29.6 from Lando Norris. Just wonderful. And this guy's getting better and better all the time. I mean, he needs to stay at McLaren-Mercedes because it's a great team. And they're obviously getting the best from him as well. But just a fabulous lap. And what did he in Q3? He did 29.7. Yeah, 29.6. Repeated the lap. 29.6, 29.6 in Q2. Sorry, waffling over here. 29.6 in Q2, 29.7 in Q3. So really, really good, Lando Norris. And let's have a look at some of the top speeds, because they are significant, obviously, always, but they're particularly significant here because there's two long straights, one really long straight. And the fastest in a straight line, as ever, are the two Red Bulls. 334 kilometers an hour for Max, 333 for Sergio. And then you've got nobody in the 330s, and then everybody else is sort of way down. Charles Leclerc, 321. Okay, so 321, Max Verstappen, 334. That's a big difference. Carlos Sainz 321 as well. Valtteri 323, a little bit quicker in a straight line with the Ferrari engine in the Alfa, obviously. So slightly less downforce than the Ferrari, obviously. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. He did a very good job, blew away Sebastian Vettel, who made a fairly elementary mistake at the chicane under pressure in Q2. The Aston Martin quite quick in a straight line, 323, 325 again, showing up, doesn't have a massive amount of downforce, exactly the same top speed really as Lando Norris in the McLaren. So the McLaren obviously has more grip, but isn't giving away any top speed. So it's more efficient aero on that car compared with the Aston. And Lewis, 323. As I said yesterday, Mercedes a lot more in the ballpark now in terms of top speed and the overall lap time. And that's where, as I said yesterday, for me, this is a genuine improvement at Mercedes. It'd be one thing for me if they'd gone quicker in top speed but lost it on the lap. But they're not losing that much on the lap. Still not a great car, quite obviously. But they're now kind of in the ballpark in terms of top speed, and that's a good thing going into the race. Having said that, both AlphaTauris quicker, massively quicker than Lewis. 326, 327 in the AlphaTauri with that Honda engine, which is really good. Interesting to see the difference in speed, actually, isn't it? AlphaTauri 326, factory Red Bulls 334. With the same engine. So that's, we think it's the same engine, more or less the same. So yeah, that's really a big difference, I think. Let's just have a look at some of the other results from FP3 this morning. There you can see the number of laps and the work that Max did this morning on the medium tyre. That dotted line under the first three is when Esteban Ocon went off and hit the wall, and so therefore he didn't really figure in anything at all in qualifying. But just at that chicane, that tight chicane, he lost it going into it and hit the wall and sort of dragged the car down, quite a big shunt actually. So that was what that was. And then they put fuel in the car. If I'm looking at Max at the moment, put fuel in the car and did that run, 35.8, 35.7, 35.2, 42.3. And that may not look like a lot of laps, but if you bear in mind the amount of traffic there is and what's going on and how condensed a 1 hour session is, they don't stop the clock when the red comes out, and they lost about 15 minutes with that Ocon shunt. And then he went out on the softs right at the end and I put the word spin in there. It wasn't really a spin, but significantly, I think he'd done a 30.0 in sector 1 when he stopped, when he had that moment at the chicane. And then if you go across to Charles Leclerc, you can see his sector 1 when he did that 30.4, which was the quickest lap of the day, was a 29.8. So significantly quicker in sector 1 compared with the lap that Max never finished. And then if you look at Charles, as I say, ran the soft tyre all day, 32.2, 31.7. You can't really compare that with anything we're seeing over at Max there. If he's doing 35.7, 35.2 with fuel in the car on the medium tyre, where is Charles with that amount of fuel? What is the lap time there? It's quite clearly not the run which begins with a 39.5, because he ends that with a 31.0. 34.7 he did on his second run of softs, but I think that was just a traffic thing. So it looks to me like Charles hasn't done anything like the same fuel running homework as Verstappen. Now, whether that adds up to anything or not, I mean, it could well be that Ferrari is so confident and they can extrapolate all their results from what they're doing on the soft tyre into the medium or into the hard, and with a heavier fuel load as well, because the car is so in the palm of their hands and they know everything that it's going to do, and it's never going to surprise them. It could be that, and they don't need to do it. But I just thought it was an interesting comparison when you look at the workload of Max this morning on the medium, not learning how to do a quick lap on the soft tyre, compared with Charles Leclerc, who's on the pole. So you've got to say, actually, not a massive surprise there. And here was just, this is a speed trap in FP3. Again, no real changes there. Fernando Alonso didn't make it through to Q3. The Alpine is very quick in a straight line, which would suggest that maybe it is struggling with grip level. 3.26, it was definitely the quickest after the Red Bulls, and without Esteban Ocon there, it's kind of difficult to know exactly where they're at, but they're very quick in a straight line. But obviously Fernando didn't get a great lap in Q2 to get into Q3. Lewis 3.24 this morning, George 3.24, right there with the Ferraris. Carlos Sainz 3.22, Charles 3.20, and Lando Norris edging up into the 3.21 there. And I mentioned before that Sergio Perez was put to work on the hard tyre, and Lando Norris did his share of hard tyre running as well this morning. So really good job again for Lando to have gone so well on the soft tyre. And there you see the comparison really. I mean, obviously the Red Bull is a quicker car, we know that, but a good run, I think, by Lando, 34.1. Obviously with less fuel in it, but nonetheless, you can see a bit of a comparison there between Sergio and Lando on the hard tyre. So let's just have a look through some of the other results. Fernando Alonso, as I say, didn't get through. George didn't get through. Sebastian Vettel made that elementary mistake at the chicane. Daniel Ricciardo was Daniel Ricciardo. Mick Schumacher, really good job. Out-qualified, big time, Kevin Magnussen to the tune of 0.3 of a second. Neither of them have been to the circuit before. Both of them in the same car. Kevin Magnussen is really quick. And Mick Schumacher, of whom I've been a fan for at least 4 years now, if not 5, really driving. I think it's the best lap he's ever driven in his life, actually, to get into Q2. Really, really good job. Don't know what happened. I've got to say, don't know what happened with Alex Albon today. He obviously had some problem with the car, and he's down there with Nicholas Latifi at the end in the Williams, and Esteban Ocon not out there at all after that shunt this morning. So yeah, safety cars are going to play their role tomorrow. Obviously, Red Bull have got a little bit more information in terms of the medium tyre. Ferrari look to be very confident. They got 2 cars there ahead of the Red Bull. So if you look at the way the race might go tomorrow, it could well be more of the same, with Max waiting and waiting to see what happens with Ferrari's management of the tyres and Red Bull responding to that, and then in the closing phase of the race doing something about it when, in theory, they've got a better grip level. That'll be what Red Bull, I suspect, will be thinking going into this race. But as I say, it could all be thrown sideways by the advent of safety cars and whether or not you're lucky, I guess is the right word, with the way the safety cars come out and when you're doing a pit stop for tyres. That's another factor that, of course, that's got to come in. And as I said yesterday, as I speak, all these software engineers doing strategy are going to be looking at all the variables of pit stop windows relative to safety cars and relative to position and relative to the tyre situation at any given moment. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.